I have a very, very quick, fast, fat quarter project just for you. Today's tutorial is all about getting that sewing quick fix. And you all know what I mean, right? If you don't know, it is the satisfaction of a sewist making a project, doing it fast, and having a beautiful outcome. Satisfaction. This tutorial is a beginner tutorial, so I do take you step by step all of the sewing instructions. We are going to make a fat quarter scrap thread catcher to keep next to our sewing machine or our cutting table so that we can put all of those little nasty threads right in here and not have to just throw them on the floor like I did, or still do, might do once in a while. I'm Tracy. This is the Sewing Channel. Enough talking already. I'm glad you're here. Let's get busy. To make today's scrap bag project, you are only going to need one fat quarter. If you don't have any fat quarter that you would like to use for this, you can cut up some yardage that you have. Your 20 inches will go this way across the fabric, and your 18 inches will go up and down as you're looking at it as we go to mark where we're going to cut. For this particular size scrap bag, you're going to need a 6-inch hoop. It can be wooden, it can be plastic, whatever you have on hand is fine. A lot of times I will pick these up at the Goodwill. They're a dime a dozen there. Once you have prepared your 18-inch by 20-inch piece of fabric, you are then going to fold it in half, right sides together. This is still the 18-inch mark and the 20-inch mark. I've written some numbers here on the edge of my fabric to help us get through this. You are going to mark both ends of your fabric when it's folded. From the raw edge of this fabric, 3 3/4 inches. And then you'll mark your fabric. Once you have the 3 3/4 inch mark right there, you're then going to measure from the edge of the bottom of this fabric up 2 inches. Then you're going to come across here and mark 3 inches. And then give yourself a little starting mark there. And then, you guessed it, we're going to go down 2 inches, which gives us this little box right here. Now remember, this is the fold over here, and this is the raw edge. You're going to start measuring from the raw edge. So let's mark this side. This is the fold side, and this is our raw edge side. You are going to line that raw edge on the 3 3/4 mark. 1, 2, 3 3/4, and then you're going to mark a line somewhere right there. Then you're going to line up along the raw edge there, right along where that mark is that you made, and you're going to come up 2 inches. Give yourself a little lead right there by marking toward this way with your heat erasable marker, of course. You can line up your ruler right here along the fold, and then you're going to go over 3 inches. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to get that one started right there. And then it's simply just going down 2 inches. Now I did that upside down, so I'm hoping that's straight. With this piece of fabric still folded, I'm going to pop some pins in just so I don't get shifted, because we need to cut this out. Take some sharp scissors and cut along this line, going through both layers of fabric. And you have some new scraps. Take your pins out. When you open up your fabric, you should have something that looks like this. I'm going to take this to the ironing station and press this crease out that I made, and I'm also going to erase these marks with the heat. I added a ribbon onto my scrap basket. This is the perfect time to use up all of those ribbons and ties that we get when we buy fat quarter bundles. I usually just take mine off and just throw them into my ribbon bin. I think this blue ribbon will go perfectly, just under a 1/2 inch in width, and you'll need about 20 inches in length. As you're looking at your fabric like this, find the center on one of the sides. And how you can do that is just simply fold it up in half, finger press it, open it back up. Before we attach these two sides together, we're going to take our ribbon, fold it right in half, and take the folded edge right there, find where you finger pressed it, lay your ribbon down, pin it in place, take it to your sewing machine, and then sew about a 1/4 inch in, tacking that down. Our seam allowances on this entire project, besides this right here, is going to be a 1/2 inch, just so you know ahead of time. Because if you don't do a 1/2 inch, your hoop is not going to fit right around your fabric. So you want to make sure that you sew everything at a 1/2 inch, but this you're going to just tack down at a 1/4 inch. You can see here, it's all tacked down. Once that's tacked down, you're going to lift this side up, leave that ribbon going on the inside, touching the right side of your fabric. Lift this up, right sides together. We need to sew along this edge right here, but we need to make sure that we leave an opening that our hoop is going to fit into, because one hoop is going to be on the inside and one hoop is going to be on the outside. So we're going to have to make sure that we leave a space big enough to fit that. You see my ribbon right here where I've tacked it down. It's right there. Well, actually, let's take this off. It's the inside ring that we have to make sure is big enough, the opening. So we'll set the inside ring right here, and we're going to go right above where that ribbon is. So the middle of this ring ends up about right there. And then mark it on this side right there. So we know not to sew in this area right there. I'm going to put this pin just like this to remind me of that. Pin the rest of the way down. Now remember, we're going to sew a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Starting up here, you're going to sew here, be sure to backstitch and break thread and lift your needle out. You're going to skip all this right here. And when you get to this mark right here, you're going to start sewing. You'll sew over top of the ribbon. Be sure to backstitch when you start and stop. Go all the way down a 1/2 inch, all the way to the end here and backstitch there. I'll go sew mine and leave that opening, and I'll come right back. So you can see here that when we do this, it fits in there. And that's why you need that opening to be that big. Next, we need to press these seam allowances open. Be careful not to hit your hot iron on your ribbon if it's a silky type ribbon. It has sheen to it or anything like that. But this cross grain ribbon, I can go right over it. It doesn't really do anything. It may seem a little awkward at first to do this open seam. Make sure your ribbon is sort of laying straight so you don't get it all crumpled up in there. Be sure not to press any creases in there. You just want to press the seam allowance open, that's all. Once your seam allowance is pressed open, you're then going to be left with this tube type of fabric with this hole in it. So you'll just want to shift it so that it lays right on top of the fabric underneath it, matching up that squared off mark on all 4 corners. Once you have these all matched up, you're going to take your pin and just pin the top area. This is the only area that we're going to worry about right now, is right along the tops on this edge and this edge. Now we're going to take this to our sewing machine and sew a 1/2 inch down this end and a 1/2 inch down this end of the seam allowance. Remember, a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Both of these ends have now been sewn at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Take your pins out and do your best to iron this seam allowance open. Once you have those seam allowances all ironed nice and open and flat, it's time to work on boxing out these corners. Kind of manipulate your fabric like you see me doing here so that those kind of pop out like that. You're simply going to just match up this fabric with this fabric. Right where you cut in the crease right there in that corner, that is where that's going to fold together. And both sides should have that little corner mark where you cut. And then you're just going to pop some pins in. Flip it over and do this side. Wherever you made that cut, there should be a corner. Pinch that. And then that side, and kind of just look and make sure it's even. So both those sides are pinned. Flip it around this way. Do the same thing on this side. You should have all 4 sides pinned. Now we're going to take this over to the sewing machine and we're going to sew a 1/2 inch seam allowance on all 4 sides. I am going to take my ends, but you don't have to. I'm simply going to fold them inward like this and give them a press. Now it's time to turn this project right side out. Press out those corners, those box corners. You should end up with this goofy looking bag. The next step is to take your inside hoop, the one without any hardware on it at all, and you're now going to put it through that hole that we left. You can just push that hoop away from this opening for right now. Now, if you are in love with hand stitching, good for you. You can hand stitch this closed right now. But I'm not in love with hand stitching, so I'm going to take this to my sewing machine and I'm just going to do a very small stitch right along that whole opening, being sure to close the entire opening up. Here's what my stitching ended up looking like. It's just a straight stitch as close as I could get to the edge here without it looking too bad. Now it's time to maneuver our bag so that our hoops can come together once again. All you do is just sort of stand that hoop up, kind of, maybe. You'll just maneuver your hoop in there and kind of bring it up to the center around where that ribbon is, and you'll just shove this in there like that. Push these box ends together so that they come together nice. You can see there it's looking good. Oh my goodness, it's so pretty. I love the colors. Now you're going to take your hoop, figure out which side you want this on. I'm going to put the hardware in the back and use it as a hook. So you just slide it on there, best you can. Oh, loosen it first. Yeah, that'd work. I guess that would be a lot better if I loosened it. And you can lift your ribbon up over or leave under. It's up to you. Pull mine out. Straighten all your fabric nice. Once you have it where you think it's good, you'll just tighten this up. If you loved this fast fat quarter sewing project, then I have hand-picked some videos just for you. They're on the screen right now. Go ahead and click them, and I'll see you in the next video. Until next time on the Sewing Channel, take care.